Okay. Oh, I almost just died. Hello and welcome to another video. I'm going to be talking about my pick for the best hybrid camera, bang for your buck. You know, let's say you don't have a ton of money to spend on a new camera, but you need to be shooting both photos and video, and you need this camera to do a great job at both. This is the camera that I think you should get. That camera is the Fujifilm XT-3. I think it is a fantastic camera, both shooting photos and shooting video. I think it does a great job with both, and it has a lot of features at a not super high price if you do it the right way. I think it's something that a lot of people could get, and I think it's still relevant here in 2021 with the 6K, 8K madness of cameras. All right, let's get into the most important part, the one thing that everyone cares about more than anything else, the price. How much money are you gonna have to shell out for this camera body? The price of this camera body new, with just the body, is going to be $1,500. And at that price point, in this time period, with the other cameras that are out on the market right now, I don't really think it makes a ton of sense to buy it new. The XT-4 is pretty similar in price with just a few $100s more. If you buy it with the incredible kit lens, which we will talk about in just a little bit, it's going to cost you around $1,900. I just don't think for that much money, this is the best camera to get. I think there are other cameras that are similar in that kind of space that are better options. But where this thing really shines is on the used market. I think buying used camera gear is a great thing to do. Before, I was a little iffy on it. As I've kind of bought more used gear, I've become more comfortable with it, and I think it's a great thing to do. You do have to be careful, you know, make sure you do your research. But on eBay, I've seen this camera body, sometimes even with the vertical grip here, which allows for 2 more batteries to be put into this, which is important, and we'll get to that later. I've seen it go for around $850, maybe $900, $950. And then with lenses, you know, it's gonna vary in price depending on the lens. The kits that people throw together, you know, vary a lot as far as what lenses they put with it. You know, I saw a 16mm f1.4 lens, which is like a legendary Fujifilm lens, for $1,400 with this camera. I've seen it with the kit lens for less. You know, it kind of varies, you know, around $1,200, maybe up to $1,400, depending on the lens that it's with. At that price point, I think this is a fantastic option. You know, even if you buy it just the body and then you get a lens on the used market, you know, maybe you want a, you know, 35mm prime lens. You don't want the, you know, 18 to 55 kit lens with the variable aperture. You know, it's a great option for the features that it has. And it has a lot of those features. So let's get into them. The most kind of striking feature that I think this camera has as far as video goes is the codecs that it can shoot in and the bit rates that it can shoot at. It's kind of crazy what this little camera can do for that small of a price. This thing can shoot 420 10-bit all intra internally to an SD card. It is going to shoot in an H.264, not H.264, an H.265 codec, which, you know, isn't super fun to deal with, but it shoots 420 10-bit, and I don't think you're going to find 10-bit video in a lot of other cameras at this price point, you know. And I think 10-bit video, if you're doing color grading and you want, you know, kind of the best picture quality for the price, that bang for your buck kind of mentality, this is fantastic. Now, if you hook it up to an external recorder, you can get 422 10-bit, and you can get your ProRes, you can get those sort of file types that are easier to manage, easier on an editing system, but you don't get that internally, but you still get 10-bit. It also shoots 4K 30p with no crop. I think that's really, really a big deal for a APS-C size sensor camera. So having no crop up to 4K 30 is great. You are going to get a crop up at 4K 60. That's a 1.18 times crop, which isn't the worst. It's not the best. The best would be no crop, but it is going to have a little crop at 4K 60. But it does shoot 4K 60. I think that's great. I don't really see a need to go over 4K right now. I don't think a ton of people are even watching videos in 4K. The 1080p that you get if you shoot in 4K and export in 1080 is going to be fantastic. And the 1080 straight up in this is still pretty good. Now, you're also going to get 120 frames per second in 1080. So in your full HD, you're going to get 120 frames per second slow motion, and it's not kind of your pixelated phone type of slow motion. It looks really, really good. It's really clean, really usable. And, maybe in the XT-4, its older brother, you can get 240 frames per second. I don't really see the need to go over 120 frames per second, especially for what I do. If you're shooting a lot of really, really slow motion heavy stuff, like you're doing some really crazy product videography and you need that nice smooth slow motion, maybe this isn't the camera for you. Maybe you want to look at something more dedicated to slow motion, but for everyday use, it's really, really nice. The next thing on the list is F-Log. F-Log is the Fujifilm log profile, and I find it really, really useful, really, really easy to grade. I used DaVinci Resolve, and I think everyone else should too. But use the editing system of your preference. But I think the F-Log is really great on here. It adds a lot of dynamic range. It adds a lot of leeway as far as color grading goes. And, it really kind of elevates the video to a point that's really impressive, where you get around 11.5 stops of dynamic range. And I think that the F-Log does a really good job, and it grades really nicely. Let's talk about the Fuji colors. I think that's something that a lot of people know Fujifilm for. They've been making film stocks for a very long time. They're not new to producing beautiful colors. And that's something that carries on with this camera. I think the colors that come out of it are fantastic. Skin tones look really nice. They look natural. They look very beautiful. Other colors, I think, look really, really nice. It has a certain kind of Fujifilm look to it, just as all cameras have their certain kind of look to it. Canon has their look, Sony has their look. Fuji kind of has their own look, and I personally really, really like it. And with it, you get all of the different film simulations. And this is something that's helpful both for video and also for photos. You have a variety of film simulations that are based on old school Fujifilm stock. And, they give you a wide variety of really nice looks. Eterna looks fantastic for video. I think for photos, let's say you're doing landscapes, Velvia is really nice. It, provides that extra punch of saturation and color. You got your classic chrome. You got just a wide variety of different film looks, and you can go in and set your own custom ones. And there are websites out there that have they call them recipes for your film simulations. And I can leave a link in the description for a website that provides a ton of recipes for different film simulations that I've used in the past and I'm using today. So one thing that's really nice is the amount of updates that you get with these cameras. And that's something that you can kind of expect with the Fujifilm ecosystem, is that they won't just leave you behind in the dust with their new camera. They'll still continue to focus on the older models and kind of make those more usable with the current tech that they have, as the camera kind of lives on. And I think that's really comforting to know when hopping into an ecosystem and spending thousands of dollars on a camera body and lenses and other like batteries and equipment. It's nice to know that they're gonna continue to look after you for years to come, and they're not just gonna, say, here's your camera, good luck, see you later, we're on to the new one. So ergonomics. It is a really, really nice camera to hold. I think it fits the hand really well. Even my hand, it's a little bit larger, especially with the vertical battery grip. It's really nice to hold. I also love that it has these dedicated dials on the top of it for your shutter speed, your ISO. I don't love having to go, click buttons and then turn certain dials in order to change my aperture or to change my ISO. I like having these, tactile physical buttons. Another aesthetic thing that I think is really cool is you can customize your shutter button. I have a wooden one on mine and I think it looks super sleek. But yeah, I think aesthetically and ergonomically, it is a great looking and great feeling camera. And I think that plays a role in wanting to go and use it. If you don't enjoy holding a camera, you're not going to want to go out and use it to create. It's got a lot of functionality to it, and it also has a great lens selection. So this is the 18 to 55 mil f2.8 to f4 variable aperture. It's the kit lens that they have. It's got an aperture ring on the lens, which is one of my favorite things because I don't like, as I said earlier, going and pressing a bunch of function buttons, turning certain dials in order to change my aperture. Having it on the lens makes it easy and quick. I think the lenses in the XF line are really nice. I also use this guy a lot. This is the 10 to 24 millimeter. I use it for real estate photography. I think it's a beautiful lens. It's a beautiful wide angle lens. And on an APS-C sensor like this, it equates to about a 15 to 35, which I think is a sweet range to shoot with. So I end up using that lens a lot outside of real estate photography. All right, so let's go over some of the things that aren't so great about this camera. As I mentioned earlier, the battery life. It does struggle a bit with battery life. That's why I use the vertical battery grip. With the battery grip, I find that it's great. I mean, I haven't been in a lot of situations where I'm worried about battery life with the vertical battery grip on there. I can shoot a full wedding with the vertical battery grip and a couple of batteries. As far as batteries go, I only use the actual Fujifilm ones just because third-party ones can kind of inflate and expand, and that kind of freaks me out because I don't want one stuck in my camera, but you can do as you like. Another thing, this isn't really a downside because it's because of one of the really good things, the high data rates that it can shoot at, but you are going to need a lot of space to store that kind of media if you're shooting at the best quality, 400 megabits per second, all intra, 4K 60. Well, you can't do 4K 60 at 400, but you get what I mean. You're going to need a lot of data space to store that stuff. So I use, these cards. I would get something that can record high data rates. These are the Lexar 200x 300 megabytes per second cards. I don't know, get whatever brand you like. Doesn't matter to me. Just make sure it can handle high data rates. All right, another few things that aren't great. It doesn't have IBIS, and for video, that is a bit of a letdown. It is gonna be a little shaky if you're running it really lightweight. That's why I don't mind having the vertical battery grip on here, because it adds a little more heft to it, especially with the other things that I use to kind of rig it out. If you wanna see a full rig build out, what I use, let me know. I can make that video, but it is a little shaky when you're running it light with a light lens. Maybe you got really steady hands, maybe I just don't, but I think IBIS would have been great. But for the price that you're getting at, it's something that you're gonna have to be giving up. Another thing is the screen on the back is not a fully articulating screen. It does tilt like this, up, down, like that. I think it's better for photos than a fully articulating screen, but it's not as good for videos. I use a monitor when I do video, so it's not a huge deal for me. But if you're not going to be using a monitor, maybe you're doing a lot of gimbal work and don't want to put a monitor on it, that's something to consider. And finally, the last thing that's kind of about it is the low light performance. It's not as good as some other cameras out there. It's not awful. It's not super, super great. It didn't blow me away. It's definitely usable. I'm not trying to say it's bad, but you know, it's not like your new Sony cameras where it's just incredible, you know, but it's not bad. So overall, I think this is an absolute gem of a camera, and I would highly recommend picking it up. But, you know, use caution when using eBay. You don't want to, you know, buy something and not have it work. Look at their seller ratings. Ideally, they have a return policy, you know, just for your own safety. But I would definitely recommend this camera for 2021 if you're shooting both photos and videos. If you're shooting just one or the other, I think there are other cameras to look at. But if you're shooting hybrid like I shoot, this camera is fantastic. And honestly, I think it's the best pick for bang for your buck. Thanks for tuning in to another video. Please subscribe if you liked the video and let me know what you want to see in the future. If you liked it, you can leave a like. If you didn't like it, tell me what I did wrong. Yeah, that is my kind of spiel on the Fuji XT-3.